Hello, this is the ancient and medieval history lesson for Wednesday, the 15th of December, 2021. And where we are is in philosophia, which is the Greek term for thinking about the world in an organized fashion, in a systematic way. In an organized fashion, in a systematic way. And one of the things that a person does when they think in a systematic way about how they think about the world is they think about how actions and choices lead to consequences. For example, if you walk up to the toughest guy on the block in a high crime neighborhood and steal his nose as if he was a little kid, yeah, he's going to introduce you to what your insides look like outside. Don't do that. Okay? If you see a bunch of bears in a pit in a zoo, don't do what Ron Burgundy did and jump in with the bears. You will instantly regret it. Instantly. So, actions lead to consequences. These consequences a philosopher tries to figure out. So, we start out with the flim-flam men of philosophy, the sophists. Only Greece would have a class of people who are traveling philosophers. But they're like stand-up comedians. They go around and they entertain people. And how do they entertain? Well, they use logic to prove that wrong is right, black is white, up is down. They turn reality into a pretzel by abusing logic to create false impressions. That's one of the things they do. But they do it in such an entertaining way. They're funny, they're interesting, and they make you feel superior because only fools would be credulous. Then again, the people in the audience are credulous to the logic pretzels that are made by the sophists. When hearing information, you can be a credulous person, which is to have faith. Why would someone take the trouble to lie to you? Doesn't make sense. So if somebody tells you something, you're likely to believe it. If you've ever seen the movie Galaxy Quest, there's an entire race of aliens who believe that that universe's version of Star Trek are historical documents. And this planet has an enemy from the stars that's going to destroy them. So they go to Earth and find the actors from this universe of Star Trek to save them. And they've built a new version of the USS Enterprise. But it works. It's real. They are credulous. They believe what people tell them. And they're horrified at some point when they realize that acting is sort of lying. You could be a cynic. Truth. Truth is for suckers. All politicians, priests, ministers, rabbis, teachers, they all tell you about stuff, but they're liars. They're trying to get you stuck in their little lies. They gain power by fooling you. I don't believe there is a Florida where you have swampland. I think you're lying. I think you're in a conspiracy. That's cynical. Cynics are lazy and intellectually cowardly, as far as I am concerned. Because if you say, there is no truth, all politicians are liars, you let yourself off the hook from having to think about anything after that. Because they're all liars, they're all equally bad. You don't have to figure out if the liberals or the conservatives or neither or both have some right on their side. You just say, to hell with all of them. When the war on terror began, I had several students who wanted to do this. Well, yeah, the terrorists kill people, but so does the U.S. military. And I said, yeah, you're right. The terrorists and the U.S. military both kill people. When the U.S. military goes into battle in a civilian area, they make very carefully sure, to the best of their ability, that they hit the corner of the building that has the anti-aircraft gun without hitting the orphanage down on the first floor. Our guys, instead of flattening a neighborhood that has Al-Qaeda or Taliban or Fedayeen Saddam in it, instead of flattening with artillery air power, just napalming the place until everyone is dead, we actually go in room to room, house to house, street to street to avoid to the best of our ability, killing civilians. So our pilots fly lower and slower than they have to, increasing their chances of being hurt or killed, shot down and taken prisoner and killed, because they don't want to hit civilians. Yeah, we kill people. And the terrorists, they look for the biggest, fattest, open civilian targets they can find to plant their bombs, to get maximum body count. Yeah, we both kill people, but in slightly different ways. And it's that difference that I think makes us good for the most part, and them evil. Evil. I've been seeing too many cat memes. Evil. They are not evil. Evil is a little black kitten, doing this, and you put a little meme on it. Come to the dark side. We have cookies. Stuff like that. Evil is what terrorists do. So, between credulous and cynic is skeptic. And educated people are encouraged to be reasonably healthily skeptical of things. And what that means is, if somebody tells you something, you don't just believe it or deny it. Those are both knee-jerk reflex reactions. What you do is you think about it. You think about it for yourself. You do your own research. You come to your own conclusions. And then you have an answer to this problem that is yours, your own, not somebody else's. It belongs to you. It is your answer. Now, maybe in a while you'll learn that your answer is wrong and it needs to be modified. An intellectually honest person will do that. An intellectually immature person will go, nah. Because they don't want to rethink it. Thinking is hard, and they don't want to be wrong. I advise you, as educated people, if somebody says the sun is shining, say, oh, that's great. Look out the window yourself. Think about things yourself. Don't believe me or anyone else about anything important. The important things you've got to think for yourself about. Otherwise, you're giving up one of your basic responsibilities, not to me, not to your country, but to you. You owe it to yourself to understand things, the important things, whatever they are. So those are the sophists in various ways. Now, there's a word that I didn't teach you yesterday. It's called sophistry. 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 Sop is try. Sophistry. Sophistry. Sophistry is intentionally deceiving people through logic. It's intentionally telling people something that sounds true, but is ultimately false. So sophistry is trying to trap people in chains of reason for the sake of falsehood. For the example, do I want to give an example of sophistry? Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say people saying that the moon landing was staged.
Yeah.
Because the astronauts, because I watched a conspiracy documentary because I wanted to think about it.
Sure, but, absolutely.
One guy was like, swear on the Bible if you went to the moon, if you actually went. They wouldn't do it, probably because they were annoyed or something, but he was so convinced that they couldn't swear on the Bible because they never went.
Edwin Buzz Aldrin, who, along with Neil Armstrong, first man to land on the moon, second man to walk on the moon, did a Holy Communion service on the moon about 2 hours after arrival. He had it approved in the mission orders. He was that much of a believing Christian that he did the body and blood of Christ with water or with wine and bread on the moon as a statement of gratitude to God for getting him there. When he was in his, I think, 90s, some conspiracy guy walked up to him and asked him that, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, who was like 93 at the time, knocked him out. He just, bam! I knew men who died getting us there. Okay? Damn right we went to the moon. But yeah, Yeah, they also use things like, they use black and white television on the first moon landing, yes. And the second moon landing, there was no photographs, yes, because the guy aimed the camera at the sun. Alan Bean, God bless him, great astronaut. He did paintings of his time on the moon. He accidentally put the camera in such a way that the sun went into it. And the thing about TV cameras in those days, even color ones, is if you aim it at the sun, you'll burn them out. So yeah, it's interesting. I would definitely look into it for yourself. I knew people who were involved. There's no question in my mind. We went there, and the thing that sells it for me is the Russians, who are our enemies in the Cold War. Maybe our enemies again at some point. The Russians had every incentive to prove we didn't go. They have telescopes. They had spaceships. They had spaceships that they shot to the moon that were unmanned. If we had claimed to be there and didn't, the Russians would have proven it right then and there. But it's good that you think for yourself. I don't mean that in a bad way. It is. There are times I've watched conspiracy stuff just to say, ugh, okay, now I'm sure that they're wrong. That's a nice way of saying it. Okay. Sophistry is we destroyed that village to save it, which is something some poor press officer said about an attack we conducted in Vietnam. And he was just using shorthand. What it was the village was a Viet Cong center, communist South Vietnamese, and we destroyed it to save it from communism. But of course, every anti-war person and a bunch of people who just speak English said, "You destroyed your village to save it." It's not right. That's a bad idea. That's sort of sophistry. Sophistry is using logic to try to confuse people. And remember that the Greek word for the devil, diabolos, is the word for confusion through and through. So if you take a person who is in the process of trying to think clearly and you confuse them because it's fun, you're engaged in something truly wicked and diabolical, at least as far as the Greeks are concerned. Clarity of thought really matters. Okay, Socrates. Socrates is considered the first of the three great Greek philosophers. But Socrates was not a philosopher in the sense that most of the others are. He didn't write books. Socrates was a teacher. He had students in the agora, he had students come to his home, and Socrates' method is still used by teachers today. The Socratic method is based on this principle. You already, being a sensible, reasonable person, can figure out most of what's going on in the world. So instead of telling you information, I don't employ this, I tell you information. But instead of telling you information, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. And through a series of guided questions, your mind will reason out the answers. For example, is lying bad or is it good? Now, most people who are honest will say lying is bad. And Socrates says, aha! So you say, but what if you have a man who has a son who's a child who won't take his medicine, refuses to take his medicine? He's not an adult. He doesn't have the right to refuse treatment, which is a right. He's a kid. He's got a terminal illness unless it's treated, and he refuses to take the medicine because it tastes horrible. So the father brings him some strongly spicy soup or some tasty sweet oatmeal or something like that. And the son starts eating it and goes, Hey, Dad, you didn't put any that medicine in there, did you? Oh, no, son, of course not. I would always honor your choice. Because the thing has medicine all through it. But it's so strongly flavored that hopefully the kid can't detect it. So the kid eats the medicine and lives, and the father has lied to him. And that lie saved that kid's life. What Socrates wants you to do is question. He thinks that questions are the keys that unlock the universe. In fact, my favorite Socrates quote, an unexamined life is not worth living, should be up here close to the center of what I have as quotes because it's one of my favorites. Unexamined life is not worth living. I can't find it now, but it's here somewhere. Anyone see it? Unexamined. What?
Yeah, it's over there.
It's over there. Fine! Obviously, foolishly put it over there when it should be up here. But okay. And I've only been in this classroom since 2014. So, sooner or later I'll figure things out. Or not. An unexamined life is not worth living. Young people who don't understand things and ask questions, that's good. You want a young person, even persons of your own age, to ask questions. Why is communism good or bad? You should ask them. Because on the surface, it seems so obviously good. Caring is sharing, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. A society without want, a society without greed, a society without poverty. People who've been purged of those terrible things. Living in a material utopia. Oh, that sounds so good. You should think about it for yourself. You should ask questions. You should ask questions of people like me who think communism is genuinely satanic, or people who are true believing communists, and make up your own minds. Otherwise, whatever you have is superstition. When you believe in things that you don't understand, that's superstition. Stevie Wonder, the great blind singer from the 70s, sang that. It's true. When you believe in things you don't understand, that is superstition. You don't want to be a superstitious person. You owe it to yourself to be a thoughtful, reasonable person. So talk to people. I've talked to people of all kinds before I've developed my ideas, and I still talk to people because I like hearing what people think, even if they disagree with me. Sometimes I learn things. Sometimes, rarely, I change my mind, but I am capable of changing my mind because I don't know everything, because I'm not God. Socrates says that an unexamined life is not worth living. So you end up with a 60-year-old who's an old fool because they've been unwilling to, for any number of reasons, ask questions or think about their life. It's often, when I was younger and even today, that I will sit down, lay down, getting ready to go to sleep, and I'll think about some big things that happened that day. And sometimes I'll be proud, and sometimes I'll be embarrassed. Why do I do that? Well, so I don't repeat the stupid things I did that embarrassed me. Okay? There are times when I've made decisions so embarrassing, it's just I want to pull the world up over me and just hide because it's so embarrassing. And there are other times I'm proud of what I did. I do it again. I do it again in a heartbeat. And that's how I sort of calibrate my life. Most of us do some version of that. It's called examining your life, thinking about what you've done, trying to learn from it, the good and the bad and the ugly. A lot of people my age are addicted to chemicals, whether it's booze or drugs or whatever, because they don't want to have a quiet moment of reflection. They will fill their lives with activity just to avoid having 5 minutes of unstructured time when they will think about what they've done with their lives. I'm telling you the truth. These are people who are afraid that when they look at their lives, they're going to be horrified. So they just keep busy, 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 adrenaline, 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 chemicals, 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 to avoid that moment. That's sad. Don't do that to yourself if you can avoid it. There's a good thing about realizing that you've bleeped up your life so mightily that you don't know what you're going to do about it. That's called hitting rock bottom. It's a good thing because from that moment, either you die or you go back and you rebuild your life. You see, most of us are not victims of other people, really. Other people may do stuff to us that hurts us, but they don't have the power to destroy our lives, for the most part. There are exceptions. Most of us screw up our lives by the way we react to things. But because we're the ones that screw up our lives, We're the ones that can fix them. If we had the power to do the wrong thing over and over and over again and paint us into a corner where nothing works, then we can fix that. It takes guts, it takes humility, it takes hope, it takes all sorts of things. But when you've hit rock bottom, the only way back to the light is to fight your way and rebuild your life. And I've known many people who are heroic, as far as I'm concerned, who have done this. If you keep hiding from that, you won't have that moment, maybe until it's too late. So I recommend that Socrates was right, that thinking about your life, even if it's a painful, embarrassing experience sometimes, will in the long run help you. And maybe in the short run too. So Socrates' method was to ask his students questions and cause them to question everything, including patriotism. Why love Athens? Really, why? Aren't we just a place? Think about it. Why do we love Athens? It's not that Socrates wanted people to say, Athens sucks, just like everywhere else. No. Socrates wanted honesty. And if a person could not honestly find something in Athens to love or respect or be grateful for, that's the truth as far as they see it. Maybe they need to do something about that, but that's the truth. Don't hide from the truth. If a person finds things in Athens that they love so much they're willing to risk their life for it, that's also the truth. I love America. I love Western civilization. Are America and Western civilization without sin? No. Are America and Western civilization perfect? Absolutely not. Are there things in the history of the United States and of Western civilization that are truly heinous and horrible? Yes. But I don't think those things define us. I think what defines us is that we constantly try to do better. And that does come from the Greek idea of creativity, the Roman idea of discipline and possibility, the Christian notion that everyone can contribute something of value, and the German notion that to be free is to be the best you can be. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep trying to be better. And that's something I love about America and I love about the West. That's my truth. It's one of my truths anyway. You should come to your own. What do you think is worth standing for? What do you think is worth serving? If you find nothing in your life but your own wants, your own desires to serve, that'll be fun for a while and then you'll burn out. Always. Because human creativity is not infinite. And there comes a point where you realize you've experienced every sensation you could possibly want and a few you'd rather not remember. What's left then? Well, you've got to find something, maybe bigger than yourself, worth living for, worth dying for, maybe worth killing for. So, for Socrates, living an examined life means all of this. You ask questions, you question everything. You question the gods. Do they exist? Are they good? If they exist, do they have our best interests in mind? Why should we worship them? Why should we respect them? Why should we follow them? Again, Socrates was not looking to establish atheism. Socrates was asking people to think about why they believed what they believed so that they could take it out, dust it off, and see if it still works. Beliefs that I developed when I was 15, I still have. But I don't have them the same way. Because at 56, I understand the world a little bit differently than, hopefully, a little bit differently than when I was 15. You will have the same experience, hopefully. So I take out what I believe, like taking something, a memento off a shelf, and I dust it off, and I look at it, and I think about it. Do I still believe this? Why? Why do I believe this? Why do I think this is true and the opposite is false? Why? Asking questions of yourself is a great habit for a rich intellectual life. and a true moral compass. We are not all going to come to the same concept of good and right and truth. That isn't because there is no such thing as good and right and truth. It's that we are limited in what we can perceive as individuals. We see things differently. And because we see things differently, our conclusions are going to differ. That's normal. That's a good thing, if we're honest. So what Socrates more than anything else wanted was for people to question their own assumptions, their prejudices, their prejudgments, and ask questions. So, of course, he was put on trial in Athens for polluting and corrupting the minds of the youth, for making young people unpatriotic, for making young people question the gods, for making old men who were the head of Athens as generals or the priests in the temples have to answer questions rather than just accept donations and accept blind faith. The last thing Socrates wanted in anyone was blind faith. He wanted informed faith, thoughtful faith. So they put him on trial. Did you ask young Athenians to question the gods? Did you lead dialogues with people that questioned the gods, that questioned the patriotism of young Athenians? Did you poison the minds of the young? And by their definitions of causing young people to ask difficult questions, damn right he did. And what they implied, because Socrates at this point was a world-famous teacher, was, well, maybe you should recant. Maybe you should, they didn't use the word recant, that's a Christian term, but still, what they meant was, say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, don't listen to what I had earlier said. I'm sorry, I was wrong, don't listen to what I had earlier said. They wanted Socrates to admit he was wrong. No, I'm not going to admit I was wrong when I'm right. You don't understand. A person who has gone through a crisis of faith and come to faith has a stronger faith than somebody who blindly follows without asking questions. Because a person who blindly follows without asking questions is defined by fear. But a person who is willing to ask God and ask priests and ask the scriptures, why? Why this way and not that way? Why this truth and not that truth? If their conclusion is, I still believe, they're going to believe better and stronger. They're going to have a more well-rooted faith than somebody who just, nope, won't question, nope, won't think about it, nope, 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 don't want to go to hell. So Socrates wouldn't recant. He wouldn't apologize. He wouldn't say he was wrong. So they said, fine, we'll ostracize you. Socrates says, don't bother. I'm not going anywhere. My home is here in Athens. If you want me to stop telling the truth to my students, you've got to sentence me to death. Logically, it's the only thing you can do. You can either admit that what I'm doing is not wrong, which you're not willing to do. You can exile me. I'm not leaving. You'll have to kill me. So, they sentence him to death. Socrates is given the option to arrange it himself. He calls everyone who wants to come, especially his friends and students, to his home. They have a big party, and at the high point of the party, Socrates takes hemlock, which is a plant-based poison, drinks it, and dies. Because the Athenians, as free as they thought they were, could not handle somebody questioning things. You've heard, perhaps, a bit of buzz about critical race theory. There are people who are absolutely up in arms about it. I am one of them. But a lot of people say, A, it's not being taught, or B, if it is being taught, we're just causing people to ask questions. If that was true, I would have no problem with critical race theory. If critical race theory taught a balanced approach to American history that showed, yeah, the racism, but also the good, the fact that we fight civil wars, have civil rights movements, that white people and black people died to give black people voting rights, all that stuff, I'd have no problem with it. I'd have no problem with anyone saying, Yeah, you may love America, but why? What if you don't love America? What reasons are there not to love America and to have a thoughtful discussion? I would have no problem with that. But one of the things at the heart of critical race theory is the idea that a meritocratic system of colorblindness is racist. I'll say that again. One of the hearts of critical race theory is the belief that a colorblind society where no one gives a damn about your color is racist. Martin Luther King's dream was judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. That's colorblind. But CRT says it's racist. And a meritocracy doesn't care about who your father was. A meritocracy cares about what you do. Do you work hard? You succeed. Do you not work hard? You probably don't succeed as much. You can choose to be excellent. You can use the God-given talents that you have and become superlatively excellent. You could become supercalifragilisticexpialidocious if you wanted to be. And in a meritocracy, you rise on the basis of how hard you work, what good you do. It's meritocratic. It's based on merit. That's all choice. Colorblind meritocracy is the most just, most honorable form of society I could ever imagine. And that is what I supported in the civil rights movement. But today, people say Black Lives Matter is true, but all lives matter is racist. That to go for colorblind is to ignore the historical inequities and systemic racism of meritocracy, and that somehow black people and brown people and yellow people, not so much yellow people, because Asians actually score better on standardized tests than white people or brown people or black people or red people, according to the statistics. So just as white people need to be downgraded in their achievements, so do yellow people, because otherwise you'd have too many Asians or too many Caucasians in colleges, in the elite colleges. Meanwhile, not enough brown, red, or black people. So let's skew things. That is what CRT argues. Skewing things based on race and teaching only the bad. That's a lie, as far as I'm concerned. That is not teaching people to question. That is not what Socrates died for. Socrates died to encourage every teacher and every student to think about why they believe what they believe, to ask difficult questions. Has the U.S. ever committed germ warfare? Yeah. Against the Indians under Andrew Jackson. We purposefully, on purpose, to thin out the Indian population west of the Mississippi, took woolen blankets from cholera wards and smallpox wards in eastern hospitals. These are highly communicable, highly deadly diseases. And we wrapped them up and shipped them west and sold them at Indian trading posts for next to nothing. Indians who are cold are getting these great wool blankets and the disease that rides on them. And it thinned out the population. To my mind, it is the most evil thing this country has ever done. That doesn't steal my love of America. It tempers it, it leavens it, it balances it with truth. We're not perfect, but we try. In any event, they kill Socrates for questioning. So now we go to one of Socrates' students, Plato. Plato is a philosopher. He's not primarily a teacher. In fact, we know about Socrates because Plato writes a book about Socrates' dialogues. Plato is different. Plato believes in a real world that isn't ours, because a real world would have to be perfect. Somewhere there's a perfect bottle, perfect set of eyeglasses. Why you'd need eyeglasses in a world where everyone has perfect eyesight and perfect eyes is another question, but yeah, maybe there's perfect eyeglasses just for style, because these are stylish, you see. Perfect nails, perfect hair, perfect Christmas tie, perfect lights, perfect camera, perfect action. We don't live in that world. That world is a world of archetypes. An archetype is a perfected form, an ideal form. Perfect puppies, perfect kittens, perfect old dogs. We live in a carnival mirror echo chamber world of distortion, where there's ugliness, falsity, mistakes, imperfections. So, what Plato implies about truth is that if you want to understand truth, you visualize perfection. You imagine perfect forms interacting with one another. Perfect horse, perfect rider, perfect course of jumping on a perfect afternoon. The truth of something is not what you see, it's the perfected form that you can only see through your mind's eye. So Plato argues that the capacity to systematically imagine what is perfect, what is an archetype, and then connect that perfected ideal that you can see in your mind with what you encounter in life, that will help teach you truth and show you how false our world actually is. Plato writes a book called The Republic, which has nothing to do with Rome's republic or the United States' republic, because to Plato, what republic is a perfect utopian order. In the Republic, education has one purpose: to reveal to each of you your inner strengths and weaknesses. That's the job of schools, according to Plato's Republic, to show you your innate talents and tendencies. And if you turn out to be somebody who is great at art and carving stone, you should be a sculptor. And if you turn out to be somebody who loves mixing chemicals, you could be an alchemist. And if you turn out to be somebody who's good at words, you could be a storyteller or a lawyer. If you turn out to be somebody who is good at fighting, you are a warrior. So the job of schools in Plato's perfect society is to reveal to people what their talents are. And in Plato's Republic, you have a ruler who is a philosopher king. A philosopher king who studies the consequences of choice. A philosopher king who imagines and understands how the world works because he's a philosopher. The closest we ever come is a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius. We'll talk about him in the winter. A perfected world with a philosopher king as the leader, and natural-born leaders leading, and natural-born workers working, and natural-born warriors protecting. Everyone finds their talent, and everyone lives up to it. That's the Republic. Plato's ideas are fused with Christian ideas and form much of the theories of the medieval Christian church and what is today the traditional Roman Catholic Church. And now we come to Aristotle. Aristotle, who's after Plato. Aristotle is one of the teachers of Alexander the Great. And Aristotle has different ideas than Plato. Aristotle argues if you want to understand the world, look at it, observe it. If you want to understand what zebras are like or giraffes, and the Greeks and the Romans had heard of zebras and giraffes, and occasionally the Romans brought them up. I don't know if that happened in Aristotle's time, but still, you want to understand giraffes? Find them. See what they do. Do they eat people? Do they eat rodents? Do they eat trees? Oh, they eat trees. That may account for their long, long necks and their weird stature. If you want to understand the world, observe it. Now, think about this. Let's say you want to observe wolves. Wolves are interesting. Well, what you do is you make a hypothesis. Wolves have society. Their packs are more than just happenstance. When a wolf group is a pack, they have a society with leaders and with rules. That's my hypothesis. I'm going to then come up with a way of testing that hypothesis. I'm going to be able to observe some wolves, and I'm going to see how they react when it's lean times in the winter and it's difficult finding food. Who gets fed when there isn't enough food? I'm going to watch who eats first. I'm going to watch, does anyone discipline anyone else? I'm going to watch the wolves in happiness, in sadness, in struggle, in comfort. I'm going to watch them in all these situations, and I'm going to try to test my hypothesis that wolves have a complex society, not just a group of wolves that happen to be together. And what I'll find, if my experiments are good, my observation is good, is that wolves have a definite hierarchy. Every wolf has a place. You've got the alpha male and the alpha female, and wolves mate for life, like people often do. So, they are the alphas for a while until they get old. And everyone else has a hierarchy. And wolves make sure that their pups eat, but they also make sure that the alphas eat before the betas, before the gammas, deltas, and all the rest. Wolves have to show the hierarchy constantly. When dogs sniff each other's butts, this comes from wolves who want to tell, and you have different body chemistry based on if you're an upper wolf or a lower wolf. And you show your submission if you're a lower wolf by rolling over and exposing your vitals, so that the upper wolf, the alpha wolf, can rip out your innards if he wants to, or if she wants to. All wolves have a place in the hierarchy. There is no such thing as a lone wolf in a pack. Everyone constantly interacts. The pack has rules, and if you break those rules, you get punished, you get nipped, you get bitten, or you get driven out. And then you're a lone wolf, but you're not really a wolf, because a wolf alone isn't properly a wolf. A wolf hunting by himself temporarily, that's different. But a wolf that has no pack goes crazy. So I observe all of these things. And I develop a theory based on my hypothesis and my experiments and observations. And that theory is that wolves have a society in its own way as complex as human beings, with hierarchy, with rules, with taboos, with tenderness, all that stuff. Now, what does this sound like? It sounds like the scientific method, because the scientific method is the application of Aristotelian philosophy to studying natural phenomena. You have a hypothesis, you come up with an experimental model to test it, you go through that and you test it according to the rules you set up, and if you find valid information, you say, this is our theory. And it will work as an operating theory until something better comes along. That's why I can't stand it when people who supposedly understand science say, follow the science, or it's proven science, it's settled science. Baloney! The whole point of the scientific method is to constantly test your theories and see if they're wanting in some way, and a new theory comes along that can change it. Science is not religion. And to go, ooh, science proves this, is to turn science into a religion, which is a distortion of what science is and of what religion is. You are literally using a teaspoon to attack a bear. It's the wrong tool for the wrong job. If you're going to attack a bear, use a high-powered rifle from a distance, because that way the bear won't kill you before you kill it, if you're going to have to go after a bear. Science, the scientific method, comes from the philosophy of Aristotle. Now, Aristotle develops a Lego of logic. A Lego of logic, a little building block of logic that you can use with other building blocks to form a solid logical argument. Here's an example. It's called a syllogism. A syllogism is an Aristotelian logic Lego. Yeah, write that 10 times fast. A syllogism is an Aristotelian, that is of Aristotle, logic Lego. It's a three-part statement. The first part is a general principle. The second part is a specific example. The third part connects the specific to the general. So, here's an example of a syllogism. All men are mortal. All men must die. Women too. We're not sexist in that way. Death comes for us all. So, all men are mortal. There's your general principle. Statement 2. Socrates was a man. He's a man, baby! He was a man. Socrates was a man. Therefore, we get to the third. Socrates was mortal. See how that works? All men are mortal. Socrates was a man. Therefore, Socrates was mortal. All kittens are cute. Fluffy is a kitten. Therefore, Fluffy is cute. Now, syllogisms are not proof against lies. You can say nonsense. Smoking soothes your throat and is healthy. Cigarette smoking. Jocko smokes Camels. Therefore, Jocko will be healthier for having smoked Camel cigarettes. It works logically if all of the assumptions are true. However, like computer programming, logic is not proof against falsity. Bad in, bad out. Garbage in, garbage out. Bad programming, bad results. So if your syllogism contains something false, you're going to have a logical conclusion that happens to be false. Still, Aristotle recommended the syllogism as a way to build an argument. You build an argument from a series of syllogisms like you build a Lego sculpture out of a series of Legos. He didn't know about Legos. They came later. I remember a time before Legos. We had Lincoln Logs and erector sets. Lincoln Logs are made of wood. You fit them together. Erector sets are made of metal. They have little nuts and bolts and struts. And when I was just getting a little too old for that kind of toy, they developed Legos. So I knew about them, and I played a little bit with them, especially when I was playing with younger relatives, but they weren't really my thing.
There's an interesting documentary called The Toys That Made Us, and it goes into the history of it, and Lego was one of the episodes I watched, and it's fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
It's recent, but it's not, like, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, there's a difference. And a kid who grows up with Lincoln Logs is going to have a slightly different way of looking at the world than a person who grows up with Legos. Just because Legos are so much easier. But on the other hand, with Lincoln Logs, you have to use your imagination. Lincoln Logs are analog. Legos are digital, if you want to think of it that way. Cool. If you want, send me a link to that special because it sounds like something I'd like to watch. Thank you. So, Aristotelian logic, based on syllogisms, is a way of looking at the world that is used by the ancients, forgotten mostly during the Middle Ages, and rediscovered during the Renaissance. One of the things that makes modern science happen is that Plato, whose ideas are wonderful for a medieval society of roles and ideals, Plato is joined with, and even in some cases overcome, by the philosophies of Aristotle, which is about observing and asking questions and applying reason and testing your reason and the scientific method and all that stuff. Okay, so we've gone through philosophy. Art, I'm going to just say simply, art in Greek society is both realistic and idealistic. So it's not like Greek art, or I'm sorry, Egyptian art, where you have these two-dimensional figures walking along a wall. It's not stylized like Babylonian art, which turns human beings into little dolly figures. Greek art, when you have a sculpture of a person or a painting of a person on an urn, they look like people. But it's not just realistic, it's idealized. It's idealistic. It's people without warts. It's people without scars. It's people without unsightly head bulges, so give them a helmet to wear. It's people without big hairy warts on their nose or pimples or anything like that. It's you on your best day. So Greek art, if they were doing a portrait bust of you, would show recognizable you, but it would be an ideal form of you. How you would look on your best day ever without any of your flaws emphasized, but all of your good points emphasized. That's Greek art. Its principles are realistic and idealistic. Tomorrow is the last day of lecturing on Unit 2, and we do science, math, drama, literature, sports, and histoire, or history. And then Friday, you have your Unit 2 exam, and then we go away for Christmas when you don't have homework from me for a while. Take care.